We've all been there, in the middle of a job, everything going smoothly, until boom, you're missing a part. United Refrigeration is your one-stop shop for all your refrigeration needs. Use your computer or smartphone to go to www.uri.com at any time of day or night to check stock on your favorite brands, such as Copeland, Sporlan, Carlisle compressors, Danfoss, Emerson CPC boards and sensors, Carrel, Hussmann parts, and K2Therm. United Refrigeration Inc. is home to these brands and many more. Looking for information on refrigerant conversions or refrigerant banking? Quick access links on the homepage can get you to the information you need. All approved accounts are able to see live-to-the-minute inventory and pricing. Product not in stock at your local branch? No problem. Use the Nearby Stock feature to find a local branch that does have what you need. Are you looking for a branch address, phone number, or after-hours number? That's all available as well. Just click on the branch locator and search for your local branch. Have a model number and looking for a replacement part? www.uri.com/ARP has a vast list of quick pick replacement parts. Just search for the model number of the equipment you're working on and click the Replacement Parts tab. If you don't have an account, click the Register button and we'll have you online in no time. With more than 400 locations in North America, each United Refrigeration branch is fully stocked for immediate pickup. Our branch employees have in-depth technical knowledge, so we can help you get what you need when you need it. Visit your local store or www.uri.com/ARP today. United Refrigeration Inc. has all your solutions down cold.
The Sporlan division of Parker Hannifin Corporation is sponsoring this podcast. Sporlan is the leading manufacturer of HVAC and R components. Using quality materials and craftsmanship, Sporlan maintains a commitment to innovation, manufacturing excellence, service, and support for its customers since 1934. The company is known for its catch-all filter dryers, thermostatic expansion valves, solenoid valves, pressure regulating valves, suction filters, electric valves, controllers, supermarket monitoring solutions, chemicals, smart service tools, ZoomLock Max, Press to Connect, and ZoomLock Push, Push to Connect refrigerant fittings. If folks want to learn more, what do they do?
You can go to sporlan.com.
I guess that's Jim and John for Sporlan signing off.
Good evening, guys. Welcome to another episode of Advanced Refrigeration Podcast with your host, flying solo today, Kevin Compass. All right, guys. With that being said, we're going to go over relatively quick and what seems like it should be easy, but a lot of new guys mess this up and it causes a lot of callbacks and problems. So we're going to go over Coil Cleaning 101. Should be relatively simple, but here we go, guys. So we're talking Coil Cleaning 101. We're into spring, starting to hit the heat of summer. So where we start having all these issues and where this really starts to matter. I mean, if you guys get ahead of your coil cleaning, it's always better. Up in Chicago, we have cottonwood up here. So generally what happens up here is companies wait until the cottonwood flies is done flying. It usually takes the first couple 90-degree days to get the cottonwood to fly. And then we have like 2 weeks of hell to get all these coils cleaned because generally they start popping up on service calls before the apprentices get to them or the power washing companies get to them. Now, with that being said, like I don't really think we should wait till the cottonwood flies. I think it should be done before that, and then service guys could brush coils off or hit them with water real quick and get cottonwood off. Because, I mean, in between that, then we're washing thick stuff off coils. The pressure washer guys haven't got there yet. So, me personally, I think we should be hitting these coils first thing and getting them all cleaned off before we have the cottonwood fly. Because it's really easy to brush the cottonwood off a coil with a broom than it is to sit there and hit the power wash a coil. And let's be honest, 90% of guys don't power wash a coil right. So when we're talking about power washing coils, guys, generally you don't need to use chemicals. Now, if you have a coil that has a sprinkler running on it and it's all calcium, you're going to need some chemicals. You got to get that calcium off there. So you need some chemical that's going to eat that calcium. Different brands make it. New Calgon eats stuff that'll eat some calcium. Viper makes stuff it'll clean that stuff off. Just be very careful about what you're using and whose roof you're on. Like if you're at a Costco, you can't use any cleaner on the roof. It's going to eat the roof material. So you got to use like a detergent, a soap. So it really just matters. I mean, some customers require you to capture all your water. So you just got to know what the restraints are with that. So before you do the power washing, like some people have like a bag company come do all their power washing and they don't have their contractor do it. But like if you're doing it yourself, I mean, I would rather power wash a coil myself. So a couple things. A good high powered pressure washer, short wand, and then a swivel 90 at the end. That is the key to doing these. So, I mean, most of these condensers, especially the crack ones, so they got the doors on the sides. I mean, that swivel 90 is awesome because you could get that gun in there. You don't got to angle it down. You just get the swivel 90 at the end. You get it at Home Depot, Menards, Lowe's probably has them. You swivel them down at the end and you can power wash in and out nicely. You want to do it from the top down. You don't want to do it from the bottom up because you're going to push all that stuff in there. Even if you're cleaning it at an angle. I know it is what it is on service calls. You got to wash it off. And if you're going to do it, wash it off at an angle. Don't wash it straight up. Wash it back and forth at an angle so you push everything forward instead of up into the coil. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get this coil wet. A lot of guys, I've seen them where they leave the condenser running and they shut down one fan at a time. I'm not a big fan of that. I will take the condenser apart, start loosening up all the fan guards, then I'll shut everything down, and then I will move from there and I will go do the condenser. I will shut it all down. That way I'm not having, it's like I can only have so much downtime on this condenser before they start freaking out. Like it should take roughly about an hour and a half to properly wash a big coil. I mean, a 4 fanners take that long, but you get an 8 or a 10 or a 12 fan, it's going to probably take 2 guys an hour to an hour and a half to get it all taken apart and cleaned and assembled back together. So what I like to do is get the coils wet down and I'll get all the big debris off the bottom, spray it at an angle, then I'll spray it on the top. And then if it needs chemicals, it's going to get chemically cleaned. And then I'm going to start taking apart the other one while the chemical sets. And then I go through after the chemicals set up for a little bit, I'll go through and start washing it out. And then I will keep going from the top down until the water stops coming out black. I mean, it may take a while. So, I mean, if this thing's severely impacted, you're going to need chemicals. Chemicals will a lot of times break up that dirt that's in there, that real tight. There was a company around us that was using a giant air compressor to blow out their coils, and all they did was push that debris in there farther and farther every single year until all these condensers around here, there was tons of stores that were impacted. Like you go up to them and the fans are blowing out sideways. That is a key to tell you that condenser is plugged or impacted with dirt. If you look at the bottom of it and it looks clean and you're blowing air out the sides and you're over motors, you're impacted. Your condenser is blocked up. Like it's not that it has non-condensables or anything like that. If that air isn't blowing straight up, that condenser is impacted with dirt. Now, if the fins are all folded over, that's one thing. I mean, you're kind of screwed. You try to comb them out, but I mean, it's like kind of throwing a hot dog down a hallway at that point. I mean, you're going to be there for days trying to fin comb out a condenser that may have no. So you need to get that dirt out of there. So generally what I will do is I will mix some cleaners super strong and I will take a 5-gallon bucket, pull the fan guard, and I will start dumping the cleaner in the coil to where it's like super strong to where it starts boiling out. And then it boils out all that debris. It starts dropping all that dirt down. You're going to have to let it sit there for a while. And then you're going to have to keep power washing. You may have to do it 2 or 3 times in order to get all that debris in the center condenser and those center tubes cleaned. Because what's happening is those center tubes and the center fins are all blocked up with calcium or dirt, and they're not exchanging any heat. and they're blocked up. The passages are blocked up so that air's not going through there. So you're not getting that proper airflow. That's why you're losing condenser fan motors. Probably over half of condenser fan motors fail for the reason they're not getting enough airflow. They're overamping and they're running their service factor because of impacted condensers and dirty condensers. Dirty condensers kill motors. I mean, you're running them. You're running the motors way higher amp draw. You're running the motors harder because a prop, when you block off the suction of a prop fan, you increase its amp draw. So it starts working the motor harder. So that's why you need to get these really clean. I mean, generally, if you're on a supermarket roof and somebody didn't make the dumb decision to put the bakery hood or an exhaust hood right next to the rad condensers, because there's only a million other places they could have ducted it up at, you should not have grease and condensers where you need coil cleaner. I mean, you should be able to just clean the condensers. But like I've said, it's if somebody let them go and they push it up in there, you're going to need chemical. So you need to be aware of that and just make sure that chemical doesn't affect that roof. Viper cleaners are real good for that. But like if I get a real impacted condenser, I'm going back there with new Calgon, the blue stuff that'll melt your skin. Just be careful with it. Don't use too much of it and, follow the directions. But I mean, you may have to mix it strong. I mean, to get all that debris out of there. I mean, I've taken coils where like guys say they're clean and, there's nothing on them. And you look at them, they're clean. You put a flashlight to them and you can't see through them. Or like the insides are like just filthy and you'll pour coil cleaner in there and it'll just be raining black out of there. Like you would have washed it normally and you wouldn't have got anything else out. But like you pour that coil cleaner on there, let it sit for like 10, 15 minutes, 10 minutes ish, and you take the power washer to it and you are just blowing chunks of black cottonwood and debris out of these condensers. I mean, it stops guys from putting a sprinkler on there. Before you put a sprinkler on something, you should probably make sure it doesn't have non-condensables or the condensers run peak efficiency. If it's blowing out the sides, it's impacted. It needs cleaned. And it needs cleaned properly. I see way too many guys cleaning condensers from the bottom. It sucks, but you got to pull the fan guard and you got to do it from the top down. Shut the condenser down, pull the top fan guards, power wash from the top down. If you keep power washing from the bottom up, you're just never going to get that debris out of there. And if you're at Target, they have a whole sequence of operations how they want this done. Like I've seen time and time again, the pressure washer company doesn't want to do it right. I mean, the refrigeration contractor's there to pull the fan guards up. They have those nice, awesome doors, which is how every condenser should be, besides the crack ones, which I kind of like their idea better. But they have those nice, awesome doors that lift up. I mean, make the doors lift up and make them wash it from the top down. You are there to make sure they wash the condenser properly. The only person that is getting screwed by them not washing that condenser properly is you and your company, because you're going to be the ones running the calls when it's 95 degrees outside and that condenser wasn't washed properly, but it looks clean. And then there's a sprinkler running on it. And then now you've destroyed equipment. Sprinkler should be the last option. If the equipment's trash, it's trash. But a sprinkler should be the last option. You shouldn't be running the sprinkler because you have a dirty condenser. You want to get that thing washed off. A couple things I've seen apprentices do is take like the pressure washer wands and they cut them in half. So it's just a gun. And then they have the nozzle on there so they can get in there and they can clean it a lot better, or they can get in there real easily and they get the gun down farther down. You want to use a real wide tip. You don't want to fan back and forth and bend the fins. You want to use a real wide tip so that way you could push that water down in there. And if you guys got access to it, a hot seat, amazing. We use a hot seat a lot, so we don't use a lot of chemicals. That heat does more for it than chemicals do at some points. The hot seat has like a kerosene heater on it, and it's heating up the water to almost boiling. So it'll just remove grease off stuff. So if you're doing that and you power wash the rack too, it'll literally just melt the grease right off the rack. So it does the same thing for grease and condenser coils. It'll melt the grease out without having to use chemicals. Like if you're at Costco, hot seat is, awesome. Because you can't use chemicals on the roof. So that hot seat to clean the condenser works great. So just be careful with it. Don't burn yourself. But that is a proper way to do it. I mean, you don't want to do it from the top down. I mean, and if you are like running into on service and you're running into cottonwood like we do up here. So what I'll generally do is this old timer showed us this is a pool brush. He would keep a pool brush on his truck. Say you're at doing Walmarts with rag houses on the ground. He would get a pool brush, it was like a 9-foot pool brush, and he would keep it in his van. He would just strap it to the top ribs of the van on the inside. And when he would need it, he'd pull it down. He could get on like a 6-foot ladder. He could basically clean the condenser, brush on the condensers, brush all the cottonwood off on the ground, so he didn't have to crawl underneath them. So if it's just blocked up with cottonwood, I mean, that's all you need to do is just brush it off with a pool brush. I mean, you could do in one sweep of pool brush, you could do like half of a fan square. So it's like 2 sweeps of the pool brush and each fan square is done. So you relatively quick, you could knock all the cottonwood off there. I mean, but if it's dirty and it's all nasty, you're going to have to you're going to have to wash it. I mean, get the hose out and just clean it off. It doesn't take that long with the hose. Spray it on an angle, get it washed off, get the debris off the fins. So that way you could have a nice clean coil. I mean, don't leave coils. If you're on a service call and you're there for something stupid like a fan motor or something else, and you walk out in a rack house, I mean, and you look up and the condensers are all plugged, don't be a jerk, clean them, because you're screwing somebody and it's going to be at 2 o'clock in the morning. Don't be lazy. Just clean them. I mean, I think on service calls, especially in the summertime in the beginning, everybody should be checking the controller, check the head pressure to make sure it isn't like super high for what it is, or there isn't issues with fan motors. Those fan motors, like in the springtime when everybody's slower and everybody's trying to get some work, that's your time, man. Find those. You're there for a dumb call. Go check the condensers. See how many condenser fan motors are out. Most customers aren't going to harp on you if you're telling them like, hey, I was here. I found 3 condenser fan motors out. Let's get these quoted and ordered and in before it's 95 degrees outside. And then everybody's buying fan motors, and then you're changing fan motors in an emergency call. I mean, most customers would rather change fan motors on quote than at 2 o'clock in the morning when you got to open up a supply house to get motors. So, I mean, it's a much better idea to be proactive with this. I mean, cleaning coils and stuff, it's all proactive. So, I mean, you need to get ahead of this. So that's why when I'm on service calls, I'll always go look at the condenser. I mean, it's going to take me an hour. So it takes me an hour and a half to go in a Walmart to brush them on the coils. Maybe 2 hours if they're horrible and I got to wash them with a hose. But whatever, that's 2 hours that somebody else isn't going to have to do it at 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's saving them energy. So, I mean, if those things are running with the condensers plugged, I mean, you're almost at the VFD limits. You're using more power on the VFDs, using more power on the racks. So, I mean, everybody wins at that point. Their energy bill is going to get dropped. You keep the condensers clean. And then their service calls are going to drop by you keeping the condensers clean. And then your sanity is going to be better because you're running service calls at 2 o'clock in the morning because racks are tripping on high head. And you're having to go out there and reset stuff and clean coils and find motors that are out. Nobody wants to do that. Or you're going to have motors overheating and randomly knocking racks out. Especially if you guys are apprentices, get up there and get those coils cleaned. Write it down. Take pictures of what you did. I mean, nobody's harping on you for cleaning coils off to keep the service calls away. Now, when you're doing evaporator coils, guys, always check them. Like if you're working on HE cases, I mean, look behind the fans. If the fan's plugged, if it's plugged up back there, the coil's dirty. If that coil's even a little bit dirty, it's going to restrict your airflow on there, and then it's going to cause you to have coil eye subs, and it's going to cause condensation issues in cases because it's going to reduce your airflow in that case, and it's going to mess with your coil TDs, and it's going to cause the top decks of cases to get condensation issues in there.
Today's episode is sponsored by the RefRush-Shield RDP Series differential pressure monitors from Westermeyer Industries, now available for transcritical CO2 systems in addition to other common pressures and refrigerants. When the filter element of your coalescing oil separator is contaminated, it can hurt your system's performance and efficiency. But how do you know when it's time to replace that filter? Wait too long to replace, and you could end up with a nasty filter blowout. But replacing too often can be a waste of time and money. The answer is installing a differential pressure monitor. The RDP Series differential pressure monitors, including the new transcritical CO2 model, are available now from Westermeyer Industries. To find out more information, email sales@westermeyerin.com. That's WESTERMEYERIN. SportsOutdoors.com.
So make sure that you are checking evaporator coils and honeycombs when you're like working on cases. And if you're working on evaporators, this is where it gets tricky. So, I mean, if you have evaporators where they're like solid plugged up, dairy cooler coils are notorious for this because of the cardboard in there from when them cutting the boxes open and working in the dairy cooler. All that cardboard gets stuck to the coil. So generally what I'll do with these is I will take my little Milwaukee vacuum and I'll brush down the coil. So I'll shut the refrigeration, I'll shut the fans off, and then I will take my like coil brush, my little coil brush, and I'll take the Milwaukee vacuum with like this 6-inch wide attachment, and I'll take plastic and put it down underneath me. So that way, like anything that comes down is just going to get stuck in the plastic, and I can just pick the plastic up when I'm done and go shake it off the garbage can so it's not all over the product. And then I will brush down the coil and get all the debris off there I can, as much as I can. And then I will vacuum it as I'm going. So the vacuum catches everything I'm brushing down. So then once the vacuum catches everything, then the coil's clean from that part. I'll get the hose out and I will wash the coil down. Make sure nothing is in front of it because I'm going to push everything down on the coil. I mean, an evaporator coil is a lot easier, especially if it's just like a Heatcraft one inside of a box. I don't really care as much about pushing the stuff too deep because I mean, most of those coils are only 1.5 inches deep. So, I mean, you're not going to not be able to blow through that, especially if you're using a pressure washer or a hot seat, like if you're cleaning them that way. But generally, you could just do with a hose, you can push it right through the coil. And then I will clean off the coil, and then I will use that green evaporator coil if I clean it, if I use it. I don't need it. If I need it, I don't really think it does that much, to be honest to you, besides maybe sanitize the coil. But at that point, I mean, generally with water, you could usually clean those coils pretty well. And then clean your fan blades. So the reason I push it in is because it makes less of a mess when you're cleaning it, because it's going to hit the fan blades before maybe a little bit will come out the fan guards. But if you do it the other way around and you're pushing it through the back, it's going to be spraying down the back wall of the cooler. It's going to be getting on the product, even plastic there. So it's easier to control it going into the evaporator. Then you could rinse out the drain pan, then pull the fan blades and clean them. Dirty fan blades can cut down 10% your airflow. Not to mention, it makes blades go slower, or the motors go slower because they load up more because they have more weight on there. So clean the blades and clean the fan guards and clean around the fan guards, because let's be honest, the customer 90% of the time doesn't look at the back of the coils. I mean, they need to be clean, but what do they look at? They look at the fan guards and they look at the face of the coil and the blades. If they see that's dirty, even though you may have cleaned that coil very well, it looks like you didn't do your job. So just keep that in mind. And then when you're done, blow out the drain with CO2 and flush it with water, because all that debris is going down the drain. I don't know how many times we've had apprentices clean coils, and then 2 days later, we're back there for a plugged drain, or we're back there for water leaking because the drain's plugged up, or because they didn't flush it out real good. And then everything they just pushed into the pan, they didn't clean the pans out good. So if you get the coil clean, rinse out the pan real good, make sure the pan's nice and clean. But you don't want to have to come back 2 days later because a coil's dripping water because one coil's plugged up because you didn't clean it, or the whole main run's plugged up because you pushed a bunch of debris down there and you didn't clean it. So that's another thing you want to go ahead and make sure is done before you leave there, is make sure that main drain is blown out, and make sure you push water or CO2 through all the drains so they're all clear. Now, when you're doing cases and you're cleaning cases, do not flush all the debris down the evac stuff. If you're doing anything with evac or acorn, you need to plug the drain, clean the bottom of the case first. You need to get all the crap on the bottom of the case with a shop vac or the floor scrubber. I like to use the floor scrubber so I don't ruin my shop vac, and the floor scrubber could take it. Clean the bottom of the case with that first, okay? Rinse it out real good once, and then suck it up with the floor scrubber, and then clean the case. Because you don't want to run into this situation where I've seen this time and time again, is guys will try to clean a case and then force it down the evac. And now you got actuators sticking in the store. The evac's all nasty now because it sucked all this like nasty, scummy water up, or like debris and price tags. And then check valves in the evac mains you'll stick, or you'll get sticking valves the actuators in the ceiling, or the box gets plugged. Now, when you are done cleaning a case with that, you should pull the evac box and clean that. Take it out. It should have fern coats on both sides. You need to take it out into the sink, and I rinse it out with warm water. Like I'll take it in their mop sink, I'll put a hose on there, and I'll rinse it both ways, and I'll put my hands on there and I'll shake it real good till all the debris comes out of there, because all that mold and nastiness gets in there, and then it causes it to overfill because it blocks that sensing tube, causes it to overfill. And then once it overfills, it starts leaking on the floor. And again, nobody wants to get water leak calls on stuff they just cleaned. And if you're an apprentice doing this, no journeyman or a guy who's been doing this for a while wants to follow up behind you and keep pulling evac boxes or cleaning drains because nobody properly cleaned up at the end of the job. So you need to make sure that everything's done like that. And then I will usually take the floor scrubber and I will block the one side. If it's Hussman cases, I'll block one side of the drain, and I'll take the floor scrubber, because they're usually teed together. I'll take the floor scrubber on the one side, I'll stick it down in there, and then I'll suck all the debris onto the 1.25-inch pipe. I do this just to make sure I get everything cleaned out both ways, because I've seen way too many times where like those Hussman cases, you can't clear out the drains. So what I use is I bought a plumbing plug, and I'll plug one of the drains with a plumbing plug from Menards or Home Depot, and then I'll blow it out, so that way you could blow out the main line. Because on the Hussman cases, they have two drains, on a 12-footer, an 8-footer, a 6-footer. They have two drains, one on each side. If you go to blow out the drain and try to suck it out with a shop vac or the floor scrubber, then what happens is you generally just end up blowing it out the other drain. So it ends up blowing out in the case. So you have this like huge issue. So I have a 1 inch, an 1.25 inch, and an 1.5 inch rubber plug in my van. And I just have them attached where the CO2 tank is in my van. And I just use those. So that way, if I go to blow out a case, I just plug one side of the drain and I blow it out. Now, I've ran into this issue before, like where there's a lineup of cases and they have them all teed together. So I have a couple 1.25 inch plugs, because that's what they generally are. You'll go to blow on a case, say like the whole lineup's plugged up. Like we have this problem at multiple stores where like the main lineup plug. Okay, you can't get to the drain underneath the case. It's in a real bad spot. So you need to blow it out. Well, you need to go from the farthest case and do it. So block the other two drains and blow it out that way. But generally, when you start plugging up like that, I guarantee that coils need cleaned. Coils and the cases probably need cleaned. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Getting those case cleanings out of the way, getting the condenser coil cleanings out of the way, even the evaporator coil cleanings out of the way before summer hits is key. Making sure you're not running these coils at 2 o'clock in the morning. Nobody wants to be cleaning coils on cases or condensers at the middle of the night. So, especially on a holiday weekend or something like that, why be proactive with it, guys? Even though like some customers may have their own coil cleaning, like we have a customer around here that doesn't clean their coils till like the end of summer. Well, then they run all winter long, and I don't know what the thought process is here. They're skipping the cottonwood, but all summer long they're running with half-cocked coils that are full of debris and dirt. So it's costing them more energy. So you're better off cleaning the coils. They should be cleaned twice a year. They should be cleaned at the beginning of spring, and then like mid to end of summer they should be cleaned again. If you're really concerned about energy and keeping service calls down, that's how you do it. You need to clean the coils twice a year. And then the end of the year, so like the middle to end of summer, they need to be cleaned a second time. So that way, all winter long, you could be operating the clean condenser. I've seen racks where the condenser's plugged up and then it's running like 2 or 3 extra fans more than it needs in the middle of winter time to maintain head pressure, because it's got a clogged condenser. And then we're running those motors harder the entire winter long, when we could have just cleaned it at the end of summer second time and saved all that energy for the last like 5 or 6 months. We missed out on all those energy savings because we're running the condenser harder than it needs to be. That's where TD alarming should be like a normal thing now. I mean, especially with all this AI stuff coming in, we should be checking TDs on condensers all the time. You should be looking at it in service calls. You should be looking at the TD and the condenser to make sure if you see the TD and the condenser start going really high, then you know that like that condenser is doing it's not doing enough work. It's not exchanging enough heat because your saturation temp's cranked way up and your outside air temp is staying constant. I mean, your condenser is getting less efficient the warmer it gets, and as time goes on. So that's why that alarming should become a normal thing. Checking the TDN condensers and then making sure the condensers are blowing straight up, or like heat craft units are blowing straight back. Like if you have heat craft units, like little like unit coolers, and the condensers they're blowing up the sides and not blowing straight back at you, that thing's plugged. So you need to clean that thing. And like those smaller condensers, you got to take all the skins off of it. To do it right, you need to take all the skins off. The condenser fan motors need to be unbolted, and you need to clean it from the inside out to push all that debris out of there. And if nobody's done that in a long time, you need to either hit it with a power washer or you need to use chemical. And then rooftop units, guys, pay attention. Carrier and train are big for split coils. So split coils meaning like they may have 2 or 3 rows of coils. So you need to really watch that and make sure that those coils, if they need to get split every year, they should be taken apart and split. Now, if you're having an apprentice do these, you need to show them how to do it first because there's certain tricks of the trade to get around this, like using the posts of the train units to hold up the fan area. So that way you could pull the coils out. You don't want to split them too much because you're going to crack the U-bends. You want to really pay attention and you want to make sure you get those washed from the inside out on both of them. So the one outside coil, you're going to have to usually wash it from the outside, pushing everything into the second coil. And then when it's split apart, you wash the other coil from the inside out and push everything down and then rinse down. I see this all the time. Guys miss this train and carrier units and, oh, I washed the coil and it's still messed up. I mean, this thing's impacted, it's destroyed, whatever. Then you go there and you split the coils and you see blankets on the inside of both. And it's like, okay, that's great. Like, this is not how it should be. So, I mean, you didn't clean the coil right. So Linux units, I mean, they're just V's. So those have doors. So you need to clean it from the inside out. Same with AONs. A lot of AONs are microchannel coils. So when it comes to microchannel coils, guys, you can't use cleaner on those. Okay. Viper makes a cleaner for it. They're the only one I know of to make a microchannel cleaner. It works pretty well. You don't really need pressure on those. We've had a couple. We've had a pressure wash, but you need to be very careful with it. You know, use a real wide pressure washer wand so that way you're not putting too much in one spot and making a leak. But you absolutely don't want to use new Calgon coil cleaner on microchannel coils. So you're going to want to clean those with usually just a hose. If we're at an Aldi, you should be on that roof every service call you're at that building for, checking those condensers and those CDRU units and those microchannel coils and clean them every time. I mean, there's a hose spigot right up there. It's super easy. They could have made it out of any customer, they probably made it the easiest. So you need to be cleaning all that stuff every single time. So to make sure that you're avoiding service calls and everything else. So, all right, guys, that was a quick tech tips on. Thanks for listening.